All around the world, people put their differences aside and come together for a good sports game. But it's not just humans that get to have all the fun. From race-running ostriches to parkour-loving puppies, all kinds of animals enjoy getting competitive too. So put on your running shoes and don't forget to do your stretches because it's time to catch up with some of the craziest animal sports in the world. Horseback hilarity. And to kick off, I've got some equine entertainment to show you that's guaranteed to leave your throat hoarse with laughter. The obscure sport of horse soccer is kinda similar to normal soccer, except for one major difference. You guessed it, it's played on horseback. Teams of up to 8 riders gallop around the pitch, and the horses boot the 40-inch ball backward and forward with their legs. Like human soccer, whichever team scores the most goals wins. Although the goalposts on these pitches range from 12 to 25 feet apart, depending on how experienced the pony players are. And this might sound like a lot, but when you're careening around on the back of a horse, I reckon it's pretty hard to get a single shot on target. And God knows what their offside rule looks like. So, where can you sign up for this mounted madness? Well, there used to be a whole league people could compete in. The American Equine Soccer League was active for many years, but in 2015, the organization mysteriously stopped posting online. Do you have any idea if this crazy sport is still around? If so, let me know down in the comments below. I sure hope it's alive and kicking. Froggy fun. Now, when I say California, you probably think of incredible coastlines, national parks, and sprawling cities. You probably don't think of a group of people getting together to see whose pet frog can jump the farthest. And yet, that's exactly what happens at California's Calaveras County Frog Jumping Competition. Every year, hopeful hoppers gather at the carnival-like event, bringing their best froggy friend with them to compete. The rules are simple. Each frog is placed on a launching pad, and the owners, called frog jockeys, try to get their frog to leap the furthest without touching it. This usually means yelling, banging the stage, and being very loud. Each frog gets 3 jumps, and at the end of the 3rd jump, the total distance is measured. Whoever's skillful skipper leaps the longest distance wins, and there's even a grand final for the best 50 frogs, where a top prize of $5,000 can be won, provided they can beat the all-time record. But they really have to jump for it, because the current record, set by Rosie the Ribbiter back in 1986, has remained unbroken for over 35 years. The amazing amphibian leapt an astonishing 21 feet and 5 3/4 inches, which is about the same length as 4 humans laid down end to end. Wow. I'm sure that frog and its owner were jumping for joy. Woofing on the waves. You may know a dog that just loves to swim, but have you ever seen one riding a wave? No? Then prepare yourself. Because for these crazy canines, swimming is far too tame. They prefer to surf. The owners train their pet pups to balance on the board so they can compete in contests against other really rad doggies. And when they're wave ready, they supposedly develop a unique attitude because they know they're different to other dogs. Wait, does this mean they start wearing shades and bouncing around with a carefree swagger? These contests were first thought up by the author of a book called The Dog's Guide to Surfing, which contains advice on how to teach your old dog new tricks out on the waves. The first competition was held in 2006 in San Diego, California, and proved so popular that similar contests are now held around the world. Judges score points based on the dog's confidence, the size of the board, and how big the wave is. And there are different categories to enter too, like tandem surfing, where you can team your dog up with a friend's on the same board. Man, who wants a poodle when you can have a surfer dude? While those dogs are busy hitting the waves, why don't you hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? It's a lot easier than teaching a dog to surf, I'll bet. They all done? Great. Now, what sporting insanity is up next? Fast and Furiostrich. The United States of America is a land of many sacred traditions. There's the 4th of July fireworks, Thanksgiving turkey, and dressing up on Halloween, to name a few. But what of the more obscure tradition of ostrich racing? And that's right, people climb on the backs of these big birds and ride them like horses. Believe it or not, back in the 1800s, the strange sport was very common across the US, especially in Florida. No surprise there. Ostrich farms with their own racetracks could be found across the state, and back then, anyone could have a go. For just 50 cents, visitors to the farms clamored atop the animals, which had sacks pulled over their heads to keep them calm. Then the sacks were pulled off and riders clung on for dear life as the ostriches sped off. Amazingly, their long legs can cover up to 16 feet in a single stride, allowing them to run up to a breakneck 43 miles per hour. But if riding on their backs sounded a little too intense, people could opt to sit in carriages pulled by the feathery fellas instead. Today, though not as widespread, the sport remains a fairly popular form of entertainment in both the US and South Africa. So much so that the Chandler Ostrich Festival in Arizona pulled in a colossal crowd of 100,000 people in 2016. But this crazy helmet cam footage of a 2012 race in Minnesota is about as close as I'll ever get to riding one of these things. Ouch. And that's why. Bouncin' bunnies. In the 1970s, Sweden was best known for pop supergroup ABBA. However, a much fluffier craze was taking the country by storm at the same time: the adorable sport of rabbit show jumping. Imagine regular horse show jumping, but much, much smaller and cuter. Since the 70s, the sport has grown in popularity and can now be found worldwide. Obstacles of various heights are placed on the ground for the bunnies to leap over, and a judging panel observes. If any poles are knocked or the rabbits are unable to jump, points are deducted. Any furball that fluffs it more than 7 times is sadly disqualified, while the one with the least faults wins. But this competition is reserved only for the best-behaved bunnies, so if you were planning on winning by bringing your huge, ferocious Fluffzilla along and bullying other rabbits out of the running, you'll be disappointed. Strict rules are in place which ban any rabbit that bites or acts viciously towards people or other rabbits. Looks like the only winning strategy for these rabbits is to hop to it. Pants and panic. Some sports are so damn weird, it's hard to see how they can be called sports in the first place. In the United Kingdom, one such sport has been practiced since the Middle Ages and is called, brace yourself, ferret legging. Just as its name suggests, crazy contestants take live ferrets and shove them down their pants. Then they wait and see who can withstand the squirming, scratching animals the longest. The pants are tied at the ankle so the ferret can't escape, and they have to be roomy enough for it to claw its way up one leg and into the next. Oh, and how could I forget? The ferret is required to have all 34 of its sharp teeth intact and its fierce claws too, to ensure maximum pain. Yet astoundingly, people still volunteer today to participate in this wacky pastime. But seeing how painful this sport gets, can you guess what the ferret legging world record is? 10 torturous minutes? 20? Now surely no longer than an hour. Oh no. One masochistic man stood for a staggering 5.5 hours while the beast grappled with his lower half. Well, I sure hope the fame and glory was worth all the damage to his nether regions. Backflipping birds. If you ever visit the gloomy British city of Birmingham, you might spot a very strange sight up in the sky. And no, I'm not talking about the sun. Rather, these are roller pigeons. The unique spinning dive bomb they're doing is the result of a genetic fault that causes them to seize up in midair. When they seize, the birds rocket down toward the ground and spin around as they do so. But don't worry, before they hit the floor, they recover and continue flapping along like nothing happened. So, how is this utter madness a sport? Well, breeders in Birmingham have selectively bred the pigeons for years, so that they all have the crazy genetic trait. Buyers of the birds train them to roll in sync with one another, and once trained, they can be entered into competitions. Of these competitions, the grandest is called the World Cup Fly. Yes, there is genuinely a World Cup for this. Competitors from around the globe enter with what's called a kit of 20 rollers, and the pigeons are all released into the air at the same time for their big performance. In order to score a point, 5 or more birds must somersault down together at least 10 feet. But they can't just drop like a flock of rocks. Judges also score the birds on the quality of their rolls, how far they dive, and their teamwork. Because this isn't just flying, it's falling with style. Catletics. When it comes to cats, the last thing you'd expect is for them to enjoy playing sports. The notorious nappers are better known for lazing around and catching rays rather than sweating it out on the pitch. However, the pussycats participating in the feline agility competitions have something to prove. Yes, these cats are willing to hop through hoops, dash through tunnels, and bound over bars in an effort to show up their canine counterparts. And their owners take the challenge just as seriously. Using treats, they train their pet pals up in private until they're ready to perform in official competitions. Then the real challenge begins, because no treats of any kind are allowed on this course. As humans guide their cats through the obstacles, they can coax them along with a toy, but can't touch them. The whole run is timed meticulously by a ringmaster who watches every single move. The ringmaster is in charge of setting up the obstacles and must be fully trained and certified in order to judge this jape. In fact, there are so many rules and regulations that they fill a whole 3-page document. It's impressive enough that cats can be trained to traverse an obstacle course. Are they really expected to read, too? Turtles on the track. The fictional story of the hare and the tortoise battling it out in a race is a well-known tale, but did you know that turtles are actually the more prolific racers in real life? For over a century, men, women, and children have all reveled in the high-octane action of turtle racing. Wait, did I just say high-octane? Sorry, I meant to say obviously slow. Though that doesn't stop proud turtle owners meeting up to pit their pets against each other anyway. Just take a look at this exhilarating showdown. Didn't seem like a particularly close one that time, did it? But with some racers claiming their prized turtles can hit dizzying speeds of 1/4 mile per hour, I'm sure there have been some crazy races, right? Funny as it sounds, the first ever race recorded in the US actually was insane. In Chicago, way back in 1902, 7 children supposedly climbed onto 7 giant turtles and attempted to race on their shells to the end of a garden lawn. Like this wasn't weird enough, as the turtles set off, spectators at the other end waved cabbages around to try and entice them forward in a straight line. However, their best efforts didn't work, and the animals scuttled off all over the place, children in tow. I guess there's a good reason we don't use turtles for transport. Pupper parkour. When you're tired after a long day of work or school, just the idea of taking the dog out for a long walk can be exhausting. So why not save some time and take it out for a 20-minute parkour session instead? You heard that right. Dog parkour has existed since at least 2011 in the Ukraine, and recently started being practiced in the UK too. Instructors describe it as a high-intensity interval training for dogs. because it packs in as much exercise as possible in a shorter window of time. This dog, called Tret, lives in the Ukraine and is an incredible example of how agile and graceful parkour pups can be with the right training. Thankfully, you don't have to be as nimble as Tret's owner. Essentially, parkour is using the environment around you as a sort of obstacle course to get from point A to point B. So it's a lot more demanding than just walking, and if you want to try it out with your dog, you don't need any specialist equipment, just a leash to guide them and treats for their tricks. So anyone can give it a go. Supposedly, it can even help dogs that suffer from anxiety because it gives them something physical to focus on. Aw, any anxiety I had vanished as soon as I saw Tret's face. Hilarious horseboarding. What happens when you cross horse riding with skateboarding? Well, that's a very question British skater and horseman Daniel Fowler Prime asked himself one evening back in 2004. To find the answer, he decided to tie his mountain board to a horse and see if he could ride the board behind it, because that's just how Daniel rolls. Unbelievably, it worked. Then, after a year of experimenting with this newfound talent, he was invited to a trick-riding photo shoot on a beach in Cornwall. However, cruising over the sand just wasn't enough for Daniel. And so when the news broke that the deft daredevil had surfed across the shallows while being pulled along by a horse, understandably, the locals went bonkers for it. Before long, everybody wanted to give it a go. And just 1 year later, in 2006, the first horse surfing competition was held in France. Following that, the name horseboarding was coined, and in 2009, the UK hosted the first National Horseboarding Championship. Horseboarding takes place on land, using mountain boards attached to horses, and is described as an extreme sport by those who practice it. I'm gonna have to agree with them there. Teams consist of 2 riders, one on horseback, steering the horse, and the other on a mountain board, getting pulled behind. Together, they have to navigate 2 different courses over a 2-day period, without crashing into anything or falling off, which looks just as hard as it sounds. Thankfully, riders wear a lot of protective gear. And, not that that matters much to me. There's nay chance I'll be joining these edgy equestrians. Galloping greyhounds. Can you guess which popular household pet can run at lightning speeds of up to 45 miles per hour? Nope, it's not your dad after forgetting your mom's birthday. It's actually the greyhound. So it's unsurprising that racing these remarkable runners is so popular throughout the world. The dogs start in a row of kennels, and when the doors are opened, they all shoot out at a breakneck pace. To keep the dogs moving, an artificial lure rockets around the ovular track just ahead of them. But how do the greyhounds generate such speed in the first place? Well, it turns out they're super fast because their flexible bodies contract and extend like springs every time they bound forwards. This gives them so much power that all 4 of their legs leave the ground with every stride. What's more, their hearts can make up nearly 2% of their overall body weight. For comparison, our hearts average less than 1%. This extra size translates into speed because greyhounds can pump blood around their entire body up to 5 times in a single 30-second race. That means their muscles are highly oxygenated the whole time and aren't easily tired out. Okay, so how do greyhound speeds compare to, let's say, cheetahs? Well, with a top speed of 75 miles per hour, there's no doubt the wildcat is the fastest sprinter. However, cheetahs aren't so great at long distance and would be left in the dust if going head-to-head with a hound in a marathon. Greyhounds are also avid accelerators, able to hit 45 miles per hour in just 3 strides. This means that the fastest Lamborghini, the Sesto Elemento, would only barely beat it off the starting line with a 0 to 60 mph time of 2.5 seconds. Although if you really want to talk speed, the Bloodhound LSR would blow the Cheetah, Greyhound, and Lambo out of the water. In development for over a decade, the car is forecast to achieve a top speed of up to 1,000 miles per hour when it's finally finished. That's about twice as fast as a plane. Geez, those poor Greyhounds are going to get confidence issues. The main event. Back in 1980, in a pub in Wales, two men sat drinking and chatting the night away. Then their chatter turned into a debate. What would win in a race over rocky, mountainous terrain? Horses or men? Horses have better endurance and can be much speedier than a man. But men are better at efficiently climbing and navigating rough terrain. It was quite the question. However, unbeknownst to them, the landlord of the establishment overheard their conversation, and it gave him a crazy idea. Why not put it to the test? And so the hilariously named Man vs. Horse Marathon was born. The yearly event challenges a host of runners to take on a number of horse riders across a 22-mile course spanning the Welsh countryside. To make it a little fairer, the people on foot are given a 15-minute head start, but that doesn't make it much easier. In fact, it took a gobsmacking 25 years for anybody on the ground to outpace the horses and win the grand prize. In 2004, Hugh Lobb completed the course in 2 hours and 5 minutes, beating the closest horse by a whole 2 minutes. But that smile on his face wasn't just because of this amazing achievement. Lobb also won £25,000, which is roughly $49,000 in today's money. Because for every year the horses win, £1,000 is added to the winner's pot to spur on the competition. Since then, only one person has claimed the grand prize, and that was just 3 years later. So if you fancy your chances, quit horsing around and get yourself over to Wales. There's £14,000 in it for you. Herding hounds. What does a sheepdog do if there are no sheep for it to herd? Chase its tail? Longingly watch nature documentaries about sheep? Nah, of course not. It gets involved in a game of tribal. This doggy sport started in Germany around 20 years ago as a way of giving mental and physical stimulation to sheepdogs that don't have access to sheep. It's grown since then and is now played competitively with all breeds of dog welcome. Essentially, the animals compete to nose 8 large balls into a goal without any physical help from their owners. Matches are timed, and as players progress through a tournament, it gets harder and harder. The time limit might be reduced, balls could be placed further away from the goals, or balls might have to be herded in a specific order. As well as this, judges score points based on teamwork and timing, and can knock points for things like excessive barking. Consequently, the canines need a lot of training to ensure they do well, but they love every second of it. So, if a dog that herds sheep is a sheepdog, does that make these ball dogs? Dock diving doggos. Some dogs love to swim. Some enjoy surfing the waves, but there are others that still opt for a different water sport entirely. Dock diving. Daring doggos compete against each other to take the longest running jump from a raised platform into a pool. To coax them along, their owners throw in a toy first, and in some contests, the dog also has to dive to the bottom to retrieve the toy to qualify. Not only is it a load of fun, but it also deepens the bond between the owner and pup. So the pool isn't the only thing that's deep by the end. Owners and puppers sink a lot of time and toys into practicing for an event, but with enough perseverance, their efforts can really pay off. The current world record was achieved by Sounders, the Whippet, in 2019, who leapt a whopping 36 feet in competition in Washington. That's about as long as a mid-sized school bus. Now that Sounders pretty impressive to me. Slam Trunk. On the tranquil island of Koh Samui in Thailand, there live a couple of basketball legends who are at the top of their game. But if you're expecting LeBron James and Michael Jordan, think again. These two players are a little different from what you see on TV, because Toktak and Molly here are elephants. After months of hard work and training, the gentle giants have been successfully trained to walk on their hind legs and slam that ball straight through the hoop. And while they don't play competitively, this was too cool not to mention, and with skills like that, who knows? Maybe the NBA will draft them soon. Dwarfs versus camels. Back in 2004, a series of controversial, provocative, and downright crazy television specials aired in the US that pit humans against animals in various challenges. And it's the craziest of these that I've saved for last. Get ready for the most ridiculous relay race you've ever seen, as four human dwarfs prepare to sprint as hard as they can to beat one camel. Yes, this actually happened. Now, to give you an idea of what these incredible little people were up against, camels can run up to 40 miles per hour. In contrast, the fastest speed ever recorded by a human was set by Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt in 2009 at just 23 miles per hour. So you might think it'd be a bit of a tall order for the dwarfs to win, right? Well, it was a lot closer than you might think. The camel gets off to a slow start, and at first, it looks like an easy win for the relay. However, its pace quickly speeds up until it overtakes them. But then, just when it looks like it's all over, the last man in the relay race takes the baton and makes an incredible run. Despite that absolutely incredible final sprint, the dwarfs lost out by a split second to the camel. Damn. Well, I hope that was just a little hump in the road of their running careers. And with that, we've finally crossed the finish line. Whew! Which of those crazy animal sports would you most like to watch live? And do you know of any that I missed that belong on this list? Let me know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.